Okay, do you think we're ready to begin again? Most people are back? Okay. Okay, so for session 3, we're going to be talking about active breaks, and then we'll use breakout rooms, and then we'll have an application task that you'll be working on. So the main topic is active breaks, but we're not going to spend as much time talking about it. You've experienced it to some extent already. Okay. Are you familiar with the term active break? Or is that something new? Okay. Our objectives are similar, right? To understand, experience, and consider how to adapt. We'll talk a little bit about the theoretical background of active breaks, so why to use them in the classroom. So active breaks are coming from this idea of embodied cognition, right? So the move from thinking that cognition or understanding is just situated within the brain to understanding that cognition takes place with interaction and with environment, okay? So understanding, there's a lot that influences how we understand. It's interacting with other people. It's also interacting with our environment, okay? So embodied cognition, the first idea there, the body or the body's interactions with the environment contribute to cognition, right? So where you are and how you interact with the environment influences how you understand. Okay, so embodied cognition has been around for several decades, right? The way that we understand how we understand. But the research in terms of language learning is probably within the last couple of decades, okay, and still emerging. So learning is enhanced when cognitive processes are linked to physical actions and sensory motor experiences. So how we learn is enhanced by movements that are made, okay, is that idea. And then using physical education-based games can boost engagement and learning. So we've all experienced that in classrooms if we use gamification, right? Or if we use interactive activities with students, that they're more engaged in their learning, okay? So in terms of breaks, so in classroom breaks or active breaks, we can talk about unstructured breaks and we can also talk about structured breaks. So an unstructured break just means that it's a break, like there's nothing planned, okay? And then a structured break is you actually have an activity or something that students are doing. So an unstructured break, the idea is that if you're working on a task or studying a subject for a long period of time, it leads to fatigue, right? You get tired and then you don't understand or comprehend as well. So how you understand and the product that you're producing is not as good of quality. Okay, so breaks can improve concentration, motivation, focus, productivity. Okay, just like a break without doing anything. This is especially true if it's a long enough period of time. Okay, so duration makes a difference here. So for example, if you're in a university and you have a 3-hour class, right? It's important to break that up, or it can be very beneficial to break that up with just a break where you have something, it's not structured. It's just a free break, right? So it's a way to refresh. So that's the idea of the unstructured break. I guess the last point here is that benefits may need to be experienced to counter the perception that a break is a waste of time. Okay, so if you just give students some free time, the instructor might see that as a waste of time, right? Because you're not doing anything productive. Okay, but if the break leads to more productivity on the other end of the break, right, then you could argue that it's worth the time that was spent to take the break. Okay, so the benefits may need to be experienced. In order to use this or rationalize it, you may have to experience it to want to use it. Okay, structured breaks. So structured breaks are when you're actually doing something during the break. So it's a break from the normal content or the normal activity that you were doing, okay? But you're breaking up the flow of the classroom. So this could be a physical activity plus cognitive component. So you're processing, but then you're also doing something that's physical. And it can help to improve attention, working memory, and information processing. So what we're talking about today is really structured breaks. Okay, so within a class, especially if you have a class that's maybe an hour, right? You can still use structured breaks. Okay, in our class time, you may not be using an unstructured break. Okay, benefits of active breaks. So active breaks can help to improve concentration and attention span. Students stay more focused. They can pay attention longer. It can reduce stress and anxiety that students may have. There's increased student engagement, so they're interested in what they're doing and they're participating more. Some research also points to enhanced memory retention. So if you're using these active breaks, then they're remembering the content more. And it supports physical health, okay, not being sedentary. Okay, there's one type of active break that's referred to as brain breaks. You're just giving your brain a rest. You're giving your brain a break from the content overload. Okay, I've seen these used in particular in the US in K through 12 education, especially in primary schools. So a definition here is that brain breaks are short structured pauses that use movement, mindfulness, or sensory activities to help reset focus, improve attention, and support learning. Short structured pauses. Okay, so the benefits, as was kind of mentioned on the previous slide, it can improve focus, reduce stress, and boost learning, engaging students more. Okay, if you use them, a how-to here would be to use them regularly. So incorporate it into your classes as a daily practice. And use a variety. So use different kinds. So there's different categories of brain breaks. So some brain breaks are better, as we talked about. There's different learning profiles, right? Students learn in different ways. Different brain breaks benefit different students in different ways. Okay. Don't use them as a reward. Okay, so this is not like something that you use to give a prize to students, right? Or for good behavior. If it's an approach or a technique that works, and there's research to support how it works, then we want to use it or incorporate it on a regular basis. Okay, so here are some examples. Some of them we've already encountered, right? So the active breaks with a language focus, and then we have brain breaks. So the brain breaks, this is, by the way, a handout that I'll link to in the Google Drive. So you'll have a copy of that. Okay, so the brain breaks can include like stretches, breathing exercises or mindfulness, dance breaks, Simon Says. Okay, so they're short, they're structured, they create a pause in what the students are learning, right? After that pause, so after maybe 2 minutes, they can be quite short, students go back to the task that they were originally doing. Okay, active breaks is more what I've been demonstrating in the session today. So for active breaks, they can have more of a language focus. So we did pass the mic, walk, stop, talk. We didn't do this, that, why, but are you familiar with that activity? This, that, why? No? So this, that, why also gets students using specific language, but moving their bodies. Okay. Let's see, do we have some people to demonstrate with me here? We can do a demo. Some volunteers? 4, 5, 6, however many you want to. Okay, it might be difficult to move everybody for this one. Okay, so for the demo, you would have all of your students in the center of the room, okay, for this activity. So everybody can go in the middle. And you would have some questions with binary responses, right? This or that. Okay, so you pose the question, and then the students are voting by moving. Okay, so you're deciding by moving. So you can choose your answer by moving your body, and then think of how you would support your answer. So, okay, if you could only eat one of these foods for the rest of your life, which would it be? Rice or noodles? This or that? Rice or noodles? No. No, you're just moving your body. So if you choose rice, you move here. Noodles, you move there. Yeah. Okay, so students are choosing this or that, right? Based on moving their bodies, right? Of course, you can do this by showing hands, right? But here, it's a little bit more active. Okay, and then you can have students justify, right? So if I had to choose to eat one of these foods for the rest of my life, I would choose rice because...
I can diversify with various curries and soups. Yeah.
Good, yeah. So you can have both sides justify, right, their response. Okay. Okay, so pass the mic, walk, stop, talk, this, that, why, those could all be considered active breaks. And you can do them for different durations of time, right? They could be extended into full classroom activities, or they could be used as kind of short break up something else that you're working on. Okay, the brain breaks don't necessarily have to have a language focus. So the purpose is just to take a break from what you're doing. So a brain break could just be stretches. You have all the students have the option to stand up, right? Stretch, do a few breathing exercises, and then you return to the activity that you were doing, right? As a way of kind of switching what their attention is on, right? Refocusing their attention. Okay, and this handout, again, I'll give you a link to a Google Drive, and it has this handout that categorizes them and gives you lots of different ideas about breaks that you could use. Okay, so we've talked about different pedagogical practice, right? And meeting the needs of diverse learners in terms of these 3 different things. So formative assessment, differentiated instruction, and then brain breaks or active breaks are all tools that can be used to meet the needs of diverse learners. Okay. But again, these are tools that we can offer teachers, and it doesn't mean you're doing everything at the same time. It just means that you're equipped to choose what fits different situations. We've been focusing on pedagogy, right? But what about andragogy? Okay, if we're training teachers, there are some different principles that are involved, right? Of course, we're using pedagogical practices as we model our instruction, but we also have to consider that we're teaching adults, right? So that's the practice of andragogy. So how is teaching adults different than teaching children? Okay, let's just take a moment. You can share an idea in Padlet if you want to, or just take a moment to think about it. Okay, we have some principles here. Principles of adult learning, or how that might be different from teaching children. And then you may have some others from your experience that you can add to it, okay? But in terms of motivation, oftentimes that's quite different with adults versus children, right? So oftentimes they have their own reasons for why they're doing something, why they're attending something, okay? And you don't have to instill motivation in the same way. Adults have their wealth of experience, right? They have their own experiences that they can share. Of course, children do too, to an extent, okay? But in terms of experts sharing knowledge, right? Adults have a lot that they can add. So there are some principles that shape how we train a little bit differently than how we teach. We can use a lot of the same pedagogical practices in trainings, but some things might be a little bit different. So according to these principles, how would that shape the way that you train? Okay, so the way that we did a teaching philosophy, you can also have a training philosophy, right? When you're working to train teachers. So it's using the same structure we had here. An example could be, I believe that teachers have a wealth of experience to share because I've interacted with many teachers across various contexts and been informed by principles of andragogy. Therefore, I provide teachers with opportunities to share their knowledge and experience during workshops and trainings. Okay, so that's clearly what I've been doing here today, right? So you are the experts in your contexts. You have a lot to share with each other, right? That I would not possibly know or be able to share with you, okay? So tapping into that wealth of experience and contextual knowledge is important in trainings. Okay, so before we get to the application, how would you differ or distinguish your training philosophy from your teaching philosophy? Is there something that you would add to it? So based on the principles of adult learning, what would be an element of your training philosophy? You can take a moment to think about it, write it down if you'd like. So again, we're thinking about why do we do what we do, right? In the teaching philosophy, that's the question. And then here for a training philosophy, the same thing. Why do you train the way that you do? Okay, if you already have your statement, feel free to share that with somebody who's next to you, and then let's try to get a few examples if you'd like to share. Response or a couple responses that you'd like to share. A training philosophy. So how can a training philosophy be different than your teaching philosophy? Of course, there's overlap. Does anybody want to share one statement?
Teaching, it will be by creating the opportunity for them to explore or maybe explore more.
Okay, so in a training, you have to have the opportunity to try it out, right? It has to be hands-on. That's what you're saying? Okay, yeah. Yeah, and that's important, right? That was related to one of the principles that we saw, right? For teaching adults, right? Adults like applicable hands-on experiences. Okay, good. Anybody else want to share? Yes.
Knowledge, and how do I apply the knowledge more of reflective thought?
Great. So teachers are experts, right, in their contexts. Yes. Okay. So it's not just about what you know, but it's about how you can apply it to that context. Yes. So when we're talking about all of these pedagogical practices, those are really tools that we're equipping teachers with, right? So they have lots of tools about how to differentiate instruction, how to do performative assessment, formative assessment, and they choose based on their understanding or their expertise in their context, how to apply those things. Yes, great. Okay, anybody else? Yes.
Okay, for me, I think when you train adults, it's like win-win situation. That means we share our knowledge, we also expand because they also have their knowledge, like how he mentioned. So both of us, actually, we will benefit from this kind of training that we give. And it also makes us more creative and we'll be thinking more critically. Okay, that's how.
Yes, so you learn, right, as the trainer, yes, and as a participant. Okay, and if you tap into all the knowledge that's within a room, you learn from each other. So it's great to have a collaborative experience. Okay, did we have one more? Yes.
So, hello. Okay, so this is about training philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe that teachers are professionals and agents of change because I have experienced my role as teacher and also as, my role as a trainer. So therefore, I encourage teachers to share their experiences and also their best practices to enhance the existing knowledge.
Great. Great, yes. Thank you for sharing. Okay, we're going to take these training philosophies, both your teaching philosophy and your training philosophy, into the next activity. Okay, so that'll be part of the application process. So the purpose of this application is to apply ideas and techniques that you've seen and experienced today in the workshop, and adapt them so that they could be used in your context, in one of your trainings or one of your classes. Okay. So what you create here has to be based on something that we've been talking about in class today, right? Or in the workshop today. Modeling various activities and techniques is generally an important part of workshops or trainings, right? So we show things that can be applied into their situation, right? Again, we're equipping with certain tools that may or may not be used, okay? So you're going to be doing this application as a small group. So we started today in groups of about 5 or so. So you could work with that same group, okay? Or depending on if we have a few people who have left, we can form some different groups. But we want to have probably about 4 or 5 people in your group to work on this. So I'll give you, for each group, I'll give you a hard copy of the Monster Book. So it's a book that's composed of lots and lots of different language teaching activities, okay? And it's organized based on skill, or based on how you might use it in a sequence of a lesson. So there's a whole section on lead-ins, for example. The QR takes you to the PDF version, so everybody can have a copy of the PDF version, okay? And then we also have one for each group, okay? So somebody from your group can go home with a physical copy if you'd like a physical copy. So on page 10, it has the first warm-up activity that we did. So in common and not. Okay, that was the first warm-up that we did. So that's featured in here, and then it also provides maybe some variations or some modifications that you could use for these different activities. So as a group, you're going to be choosing one activity. It can be an activity anywhere from this book, or it can be an activity from what we did today in the workshop. Okay, something else that was demoed. So you're adapting this activity to be used in a training. The training should feature something about the topics that we've been discussing today. Formative assessment, differentiated instruction, or active breaks. Okay, your training plan, so you're creating a training plan. If somebody looks at this training plan, they would also have an idea of what to expect, like what you're going to be doing in that session. So in the training plan, you have a session title, you have objectives, you have a description of who you're training and the context, and you have your training philosophy that's guiding how you're conducting this. Okay, so as a group, you can share what your training philosophies were, and you can compile them, or you can choose one that best fits what you're going to do. And then the actual plan should be how much time it's going to take, which activity you're doing. So if you're choosing from the Monster book, reference the page and the title of the activity so everybody else can see what it is. Your facilitation strategy. Okay, so what technique are you using to facilitate the session? And any materials or tools, like what you would do in a lesson plan, yeah? Okay, so you're going to discuss that with your group members. After you've discussed that, you're going to display it on a poster paper. So we have poster papers over here. Okay, you're putting your training plan on the poster paper, and then afterwards, we're going to have a gallery walk so that you can see what the other groups have come up with for training plans. Okay, so be specific enough so that if somebody just looks at your poster, they can understand what to do. Because you're not explaining your poster, you're not presenting it. Okay. Okay. Any questions about that, about what to do? Good question. So I think we can probably take, well, we can probably take about 30 minutes, yeah, to do this. Does that seem adequate? Yeah. Okay. Too much? No, enough. Okay. Let's do 30 minutes then. Okay, and you can, again, work with your same group as what you had at the beginning, and we'll have some groups staying in here, and then some groups using breakout rooms. Okay? So, how many groups do we still have? Okay, so we'll have group 1, 2, 3, 4, stay here. Okay, 5 and 6, you're going to breakout room 1. They're labeled, yeah? 7 and 8, breakout room 2, 9, 10, room 3, and group 11, room 4. On display now. So the training plans, what we're going to do is a free gallery walk. Okay, so for a gallery walk, you can walk around, look at the different posters, read through them, okay, and see what might be applicable for your context. Okay, so we'll take a little bit of time to do that, right? Look over the posters. Yes, starting now. Okay, we're going to start to wrap up so you can make your way back to your seat. Okay, as we wrap up, you can still look at the posters a little bit and see the comments that were made on your poster or your training, yeah? And as some just final activities here, there's the activity tracker that you could add to, right? The physical form. We also have the Padlet. There's a section for final reflections. Any final comments that you want to make or reflections on the workshop overall can be added to that section. And then there's also a post-workshop survey. So that's the new QR code. So in that new QR code, you can answer a few questions, provide a little feedback and comments related to your experience and your perspective of the workshop today. Okay, and one more QR code for you. So this final one gets you to the Google Drive where I've shared a few documents, but I'll also share the slides from the presentation. Again, if you want to use any of the slides for your own purposes, feel free to do that. You can adapt them or modify them however you wish. So the slides are not in there now, but I'll add those later. Okay. Okay, and thank you so much for your attendance and attention and cooperation during this session. It was my pleasure to be with you all today, and hopefully we can stay in touch if you would like to. So you have contact information for me there. Okay, thank you.